You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie's. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
No spin, no bias, no censorship, and no leader. This is Dan Wootton tonight. After 44 excruciating days, Liz Truss's Downing Street nightmare is over.
I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
While she's now consigned to history, Britain's future and that of the Conservative Party looks more unstable than ever. And as far as I'm concerned, there's only one choice: to be the next PM. I'll explain in my digest next, while it's vital that Boris Johnson returns to number 10 to thwart his right-hand man turned nemesis, Fishy Rishi Sunak, and the globalist Remainer coup that ousted Truss. On this chaotic day in Westminster, I'll get reactions from my superstar panel too. Conservative commentator Dominique Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole. Plus, I want to know who you're backing from some of the front runners and wildcards. Cast your vote for a new PM now ahead of the clash at 9:20. I've got a blockbuster lineup of politicians and commentators to battle it out too. And as Jeremy Hunt and Michael Gove rule themselves out of the race to become PM, thank God, a Tory MP's planning a stitch-up. My great Conservative minds, Daily Mail columnist Andrew Pearce and Telegraph associate politics editor Christopher Hope give their expert analysis at 9:40. Could Truss have succeeded without the MSM and the political establishment battling against her? And do you feel sorry for Britain's shortest-serving Prime Minister? I do. So we're going to have that as our big debate at 10 p.m. Truss wasn't today's only victim, though. Channel 4 newsreader Krishnan Guri Murthy has been suspended after this foul-mouthed faux pas directed at Tory Minister Steve Baker.
What a
So does that shocking hot moment prove Channel 4 is a biased broadcaster rather than the impartial news organisation it claims to be? Fleet Street legend Calvin Mackenzie is tonight's outsider at 9:50. As the Conservative Party seemingly falls apart, does the UK need a new anti-woke political force on the right? And is our very own Nigel Farage the man to lead it? We'll debate at 10:30. Plus some levity on a dark day in politics as one of Britain's best-loved comedians looks back at a political stint that never failed to put a smile on our faces.
I thought you had high-quality standards at GB News, but...
We do.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
Ms Truss, enough already.
It all went downhill from there, didn't it? The irrepressible Jim Davidson uncancelled at 10:40. Plus, he's the man whose bombshell book shone a light on the cracks in the Windsor family and exposed Meghan as a narcissistic sociopath in the eyes of palace staff. Now Valentine Lowe reveals whether the royal truce is holding 1 month after the Queen's funeral. He joins me live at 10:20. And 2022 might feel like an annus horribilis, but it's nothing compared to Her late Majesty's.
Opens her mouth and hand grenades come out. She wants to tear down the temple.
Let's go for it.
What the hell is she doing?
I won't go quietly. I'll battle till the end.
Yes, the Walesers are at war in the highly controversial new series of The Crown from Netflix, a preview of the dramatic and controversial trailer coming up. Plus, I'll reveal how tomorrow's newspapers are covering the takedown of Truss and Crown, my final Greatest Britain and Union Jackass of this week. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Breaking tonight, Liz Truss, the shortest-serving Prime Minister in British history. All attention now turning to who replaces her. Our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, live now at Westminster. Tom, what's fascinating is that, as far as I could see, the 1922 committee, this is going to be the subject of my digest in just a moment, doing all they can to stitch up this race so Boris Johnson had no chance of returning to number 10 Downing Street. However, Tom, lots of folk now telling me they believe Boris does have what it takes to make the 100 MP threshold. Do you agree, Tom? Because so far, over 40 MPs have already backed him publicly.
That's right, Dan. I can tell you that 41 as of this time this evening have now backed Boris Johnson. That is compared to 29 who are publicly backing Rishi Sunak, and indeed 15 who are publicly backing Penny Mordaunt as of 9 o'clock this evening. However, clearly there is a lot more to go, and the next 3 days will be incredibly crucial before that 2 p.m. deadline on Monday for those nominations. After that, we know the process goes a round of MP voting, perhaps a second round of MP voting, until you get down to those 2 candidates who go to the membership. But crucially, and perhaps interestingly, something that may well change the dynamic of this race, a further indicative vote of MPs between their final 2. So we'll see where MPs believe who they might win, and that might be a different person to the membership. But overall, the extraordinary story of tonight is just how many MPs are backing the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Indeed, and all of these whips, Tom. Because let's be honest, Tom, whatever you think of him, and you obviously know my views, fishy Rishi Sunak, he's not a unity candidate, is he? I mean, he's completely divisive.
Well, clearly, it's going to be a huge job for whoever gets it to bring the Conservative Party back together. Very clearly, there is a big division, open warfare that we've seen over the past 5 weeks. There have been 1 or 2 Conservative MPs who say they wouldn't serve under Boris Johnson. However, that's clearly going to be the case with Rishi Sunak as well. Penny Mordaunt, a name being considered, but far behind in terms of those public backers. Really, the next 12 hours is going to be vital in terms of early nominations, that early momentum, because ultimately it's about those quick names now in terms of who's going to see viable. At the moment, the race is looking more and more like Boris versus Rishi.
Tom Harwood, brilliant work today, live from Westminster. Thank you so much. And I've got my digest on why the Conservative Party must BBB. Apparently that's the little phrase that's shooting around the WhatsApp groups. Bring back Boris. Then my superstar panel weigh in. They are very divided on this. Tonight, the political commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicole. But first, on a dramatic day, a historic day actually in British politics, Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening to you. It certainly has been a heck of a day in Westminster. A new Prime Minister will be elected by the end of next week, with Liz Truss standing down today after just 44 days in the job. Announcing her resignation earlier on today, the Prime Minister said she's been unable to deliver the mandate on which she had been elected. She'll become the shortest-serving Prime Minister in British history when she leaves office.
I recognise, though, Given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party. This morning I met the chairman of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady. We've agreed that there will be a leadership election to be completed within the next week.
Well, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, doesn't want a leadership election. He's calling for a general election.
Well, what a mess. And this is not just a soap opera at the top of the Tory party. It's doing huge damage to our economy and to the reputation of our country. And the public are paying with higher prices, with higher mortgages. So we can't have a revolving door of chaos. We can't have another experiment at the top of the Tory party. There is an alternative, and that's a stable Labour government. And the public are entitled to have their say, and that's why there should be a general election.
Well, in the race to replace Liz Truss, political website Guido Fawkes claims Boris Johnson now has well over a third of the required backing from Tory MPs. It's being updated all the time, 42 at the moment. Rishi Sunak has 29 and Penny Mordaunt has 16 backers at the moment out of the 100 minimum required. Meanwhile, the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, says there are no words to describe the utter shambles, as she puts it, that the Tories are in.
I don't see, firstly, how there is any possibility of this dysfunctional, broken Tory party uniting behind any alternative Prime Minister, as I said a moment ago, let alone one that would be in the public interest. But all of these names, I mean, Boris Johnson, it is ridiculous to suggest that a Prime Minister who just, 2 or 3 months ago, resigned in deep disgrace could come back and be Prime Minister again. And if that happens, all that does is prove beyond a shadow of a doubt of how utterly broken UK Westminster politics is.
Well, in news away from Westminster, people working with children should be legally required to report cases of child sex abuse or face prosecution themselves. That's one of the key findings of an independent 7-year inquiry. It says some institutions are failing to protect children and calls for a new child protection authority to be established in England and Wales. And just lastly, it's emerged a Russian fighter jet released a missile close to a British aircraft over the Black Sea last month. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace told the Commons today the incident had occurred in international airspace while an RAF surveillance aircraft was out on patrol. He says Russia is blaming a technical malfunction. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, where now it's time for Dan Wootton Tonight.
After another unprecedented day in British politics, with failed Liz Truss forced out of office after just 44 days because she gave in to the establishment and went against her commitment to voters, it's yet again blindingly obvious that the Westminster establishment is stacked against the people and therefore democracy itself. The Truss premiership should never have happened. I spent months on this show warning Conservative MPs against deposing Boris Johnson at the behest of the Blob, the Globalists, the Ramonas and a conspiring mainstream media. But the dastardly coalition of the Wets, who aren't actually real Conservatives anyway, gave in. And they rolled a man who secured his party an 80-seat majority and delivered Brexit because they were convinced they would get their man, Fishy Rishi Sunak, into number 10 Downing Street. When that didn't happen, they were out to destroy Liz Truss and her low-tax agenda. To hell with the damage it would cause the country. Truss proved tragically and pathetically weak. After spending all summer convincing us she wouldn't U-turn, she did just that. At the slightest hint of opposition, and the dark forces who run Westminster knew they'd got her. For the past few weeks, she has been an embarrassing lame duck leader who allowed Ramonas to stage a coup, imposing Jeremy Hunt as the country's de facto PM, even if he only became Chancellor officially. It's been an anti-democratic disgrace, and quite rightly, voters have deserted the Tories in droves. Well, following her inevitable resignation today, the fix is almost in, the stitch-up almost complete. Earlier tonight, the all-powerful 1922 committee has done everything possible to stop Boris Johnson becoming Prime Minister and secure the job for Fishy Rishi, forgetting he was just overwhelmingly rejected by party members.
Candidates will be expected to have at least 100 colleagues nominating them. Nominations can be accepted either by signature or by email. We will then go on to conduct whatever ballots are necessary during the course of Monday. And when we reach 2 final candidates, we will also conduct an indicative ballot so that it is clear what the balance of preference within the parliamentary party is.
So they've put that 100 ceiling in to try and stop Boris. Because if the vote goes to Conservative Party members, mark my words, Boris will be PM again by next Friday. He is the only candidate who can come to the job with a proven track record of success and a clear mandate from the country. And he's the only candidate who can avoid a general election and likely defeat slippery Starmer in 2024. But by demanding only candidates with the support of 100 MPs can be voted on by members, the grey suits in the party are trying to make it almost impossible for Boris to return. And I'll tell you why. They want a Rishi coronation. They want a Rishi coronation worked out over the weekend in dodgy backroom deals at Westminster between other big figures in the party like Penny Mordaunt and Michael Gove. The Tory right and grassroots members who are determined to win the war on woke, fight back against globalists, deliver a strong Brexit, cut taxes and stop the illegal Channel invasion, they have to stand up against such a dodgy deal. They must all, and I mean all, unite behind Boris to be Prime Minister again, right now, before it's too late. As one Tory association chair told the Daily Mail tonight, the membership will go absolutely bananas if they are excluded, and it is rigged. It will be MPs backing Rishi Sunak or Penny Mordaunt versus the membership. We can't be treated with contempt. Boris is the only candidate feared by the opposition. If you've been watching any of the MSN today, I found it hilarious seeing and hearing the growing panic in the voices and fear in the eyes of the Westminster elite and political editors as they came to the realisation that the Brexit-delivering proven vote winner could return to number 10 and deny their man Starmer an almost certain tilt at the top job. Boris is the only candidate with the slightest chance of turning around the party's disastrous poll ratings and saving the Conservatives from a 1997-style wipeout. Just remember, if anyone other than Boris, and I include Sunak in this, is elected, the clamour for a general election will become overwhelming and I think impossible to ignore. More so, Sunak is a globalist shill who the party have not forgiven for his backstabbing of Boris. The other likely candidates, including the brilliant Kemi Badenoch and excellent and brave Suella Braverman, are largely untested, although, in my opinion, Braverman's short stint as Home Secretary has proven she is the only other likely candidate with the balls to take on the establishment and the blob. A Sunak ally told the Mail Online today it was, quote, natural logic for the former Chancellor to go head-to-head with Boris, and they added, it will be a battle for the soul of the party. Indeed it will. But that battle must be allowed to happen. Not stitched up by MPs and party grandees in the early hours of the morning in the bars of Westminster. If a Sunak coronation happens on Monday, I don't foresee a happy ending for the Conservative Party. To respond now, my superstar panel. The political commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. Sean Bailey, as the Conservative on the panel tonight, I'm going to come straight to you.
Thanks.
This
Appreciate that.
cannot be a stitch-up, can it? This cannot be a stitch-up. There has to be a genuine competition. It has to go to members. And Sean, the key point is it has to involve Boris Johnson. Otherwise, I think your party could be heading to a wipeout, a generation-long wipeout?
Here's the three things I'd say. Firstly, I did point out, along with others, much as yourself, that it would be a serious act of self-harm to remove the PM. That proved to be correct. You remove a second PM, it's even more self-harm. So,
and you said that right until the end, I remember that.
Exactly. So now we need to act quickly. So the two things I'd say, if you keep the members out, you might satisfy the MSM's appetite, but you will not satisfy the party, and then fighting any general election will be hard, and then members will bully their MPs to be dissenting. Because if you cut them out, then it'll be harder to bring the party together, in short, is what I'm saying. And thirdly, we live in a democracy. Let's let people have their say. And MPs will have to realise they are not the only power within the confines of the Conservative Party. They have to trust the members, and the members have to trust them. If they lock the members out, it'll feel that MPs can't be trusted.
Dominic Samuels, we are usually in agreement on most things, but you are completely outraged at the BBB campaign. Why? He was the democratically elected Prime Minister.
Look, if you think Boris is the answer to the problem, then you don't understand the problem. The reason why we're in this mess is because of Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson started the lockdowns that ruined the economy. Boris Johnson supports net zero that's going to further ruin the economy and impoverish the average person. Boris Johnson himself is a globalist who signed up to all of the globalist agendas, such as net zero, and fueling what is looking like a long war in Ukraine. It's Boris Johnson and his allies that backed the disaster that is Liz Truss, got her into No 10, and as we've seen, she's lasted a whopping 44 days in office. And I did say that Liz Truss would be a disaster, and the magic policies that she proposed probably wouldn't be put in place, and that's just the reality of the Conservative Party at the moment. What we need, in my opinion, is a general election. The Tories have had their time now. I think that right-wing parties should come together and try and at least get some seats in Parliament.
But the thing is, and we're going to talk about that later in the show, but when it comes to the Conservative Party, Dominic, they're not going to do that, whether you think that's a good thing or not. And part of me does think we should have a general election, but that's not going to happen because it would be electoral suicide for the Conservative Party. So isn't this, Dominic, about the alternatives? And the reality is, if you speak about globalists, well, I'm sorry, if you get Sunak or Mordaunt in there, we're basically handing ourselves over to the World Economic Forum.
But really, think about it. What is the difference, though?
Well,
because
I think Boris
Sunak
ran a broad church, and I think he fought back a lot harder than virtually anyone else would have, and especially when it came to lockdowns, which obviously I was opposed to from the start, and he was weak for a long time. But he took us out far quicker than I think Sunak or Mordaunt or any of the alternatives would have.
I don't agree with that. And I think with this, there's some sort of collective amnesia here. It was Rishi Sunak who, from the very earliest stages of the pandemic, spoke about the economic effects of the lockdowns and actually was extremely sceptical of them.
He wasn't against any of
them. But
them.
it was Boris Johnson
He did speak he did speak about the effects, that's correct.
Well, he's
never
rewritten
said we
history,
shouldn't have
isn't
any.
he?
But it was Boris Johnson who actually put them in place. I'm getting really sick of people acting like he's the second coming of Christ when the reason we're in this situation is
but
because
the point
of
is,
Boris
Dominic,
Johnson.
also part of it is about democracy. You know, he was elected. He was elected by a majority. I don't think there is anything he did. And by the way, you know I've criticised Boris Johnson time and again on this show, but it has to be a high bar to depose a democratically elected Prime Minister, because look at what happens when you do.
Yeah,
look at the mess you create when you do that. And we've just seen that with Truss. So the Conservative Party, I think, if you want to go to a coalition of right-wing parties, we're going to talk about that later in the show, so we'll come back to that. I understand that. But with the first past the post electoral system that we have, it's basically the Conservative Party or bust at the moment, because if we get Starmer with Sturgeon in number 10 Downing Street, look at what's going to happen.
Look, I'm sorry, Dan, maybe it's time for that. Maybe it's time for people to see that both parties are completely
I think they would destroy
useless.
Britain.
And I don't think Boris Johnson would win the next general election either. It's over.
Amy Nicole, from a left-wing perspective, you're hating today, aren't you?
No,
because you are hating today because you know that the one person who can come back and defeat your man Starmer is Boris Johnson. You've got that fear in your eyes.
Oh, the delusion is delicious. Bring Boris back.
BBB.
Put it to general election and then see how popular he really is. Because I fear you're stuck in a bit of a bubble here, and you've forgotten that generally the populace can't stand Boris Johnson, and he will be the downfall of your already crumbling party.
They're not at
Do you know
all
what
of
this
your
feels like?
Islington dinner parties, Amy.
This feels like you're at a Tory Islington dinner party with a buffet. You've had a little bit of everything. You've literally run out and you've gone back to the thing that gave you food poisoning in the first place.
Anytime I'm out in the streets, outside of your little London bubble, let me tell you, the public absolutely back Boris Johnson. But look, the superstar panel here all night, Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey and Dominic Sanders.
Good to have you back.
Much more to come from them. And also coming up, as Jeremy Hunt and Michael Gove rule themselves after the race to become Prime Minister, thank God, our Tory MPs planning a pro-Rishi stitch-up. My great Conservative Minds Daily Mail columnist Andrew Pearson, Daily Telegraph columnist Christopher Hope give their expert analysis soon. But up next in The Clash, who do you think should be the next Prime Minister to save the Conservative Party and the country from disaster? Conservative commentator Alex Dean, co-organiser of the Bring Back Boris petition, Alex Story, political commentator Suzanne Evans, entrepreneur Charlie Mullins, and editor for Conservative Women Kathy Ginchel. They're all going to reveal their picks next. But your voice on this is most important to me. So email me at dan@gbnews.uk, tweet me using the handle @gbnews. We've got a poll running there too. The results in just 2 minutes' time. Don't go anywhere.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
It's time now for The Clash. Now, in the aftermath of Liz Truss's resignation today, all eyes have turned to who will take her place in what's sure to be a lightning-fast and potentially dodgy stitch-up of an election. Currently, Boris Johnson, who is reportedly considering running for the top job again, is leading polls among Tory members, with Boris backstabber fishy Rishi Sunak coming in close second. He is also said to have the biggest backing amongst MPs. His 42 supporters is just under the combined total of Sunak and Penny Mordaunt. And with rising stars like Suella Braverman also potentially going to throw their hat into the ring, it's shaping up to be a saturated ballot. But who should be elected as our new Prime Minister to save both the party and Britain from disaster? Send me your thoughts to dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet me at GBNews. We also want your say on who you're backing to be PM. Is it Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt or Suella Braverman? Let me know by voting in our Twitter poll. I'll bring you those results shortly. But joining me now to show who they're backing is the Conservative commentator and Penny Mordaunt supporter Alex Dean, the former Conservative parliamentary candidate and co-organiser of the Bring Back Boris petition Alex Story, and political commentator Suzanne Evans. Evans. Great to have you all here, and the Conservative Women editor, Cathy Gingell, too. So, Alex, look, I've got to come to you first because you are one of the leaders of this BBB campaign, Bring Back Boris. Now, just a few hours ago, it looked so unlikely that he would reach the threshold of 100 MPs, which the 1922 committee had clearly set to try and keep him out of the race. However, as of tonight, lots of sources telling me it's looking very good and Boris has the early momentum. Is that what you're hearing?
There's two Alexes on the show, and one of my great friends is Alex Dean. Do you mean Alex Story or do you mean Alex Dean?
Alex Story. Alex Story, you, because you're the BBB campaign, right?
I'm the triple B, which is nearly junk, but with a little plus. The point is that the Tory party is in an impasse, and the only way that it can recover is just by allowing Boris to see out his term. I mean, it's an insanity to try and replace anybody else after this disaster, this car crash, which we had with Penny Mordaunt and Kwasi and everything, and everybody else. But Penny is what can Penny do? Penny cannot win the country. Penny is not an impressive character. She's all right, but she's not. She doesn't have the character to be able to carry the North. She doesn't have the standing to be able to win the country. Boris has the legitimacy. He won he won 14 million votes. He won the 80-seat majority, and he also won the vote of no confidence, which means that anybody who says that this is a parliamentary democracy, therefore we should have done away with Boris because this is the way things are going, their argument is done, right? So I'm not sure where they go. The Tory party has one last chance to succeed, and the only person who can bring the country together is Boris. And we all know this. The idea that anybody else can do it is fantasy. And I like everybody on the show, but there's no other way out. It's either that or oblivion.
OK, very strong case, although your friend, who you refer to, Alex Dean. Alex, you have a different opinion. You actually think it's Penny Mordaunt who has the early momentum.
I'm really sorry. I don't think that at all, and I don't know where you've got that idea. Like last time, I believe that Kemi Badenoch should leave the Conservative Party, and with no disrespect meant to Penny Mordaunt, I would never back her and never have. Of course, of the four people you've got in your Twitter poll, if those are the options, I would vote for Suella Braverman, who I've known for a very long time, who I think is a tremendous politician. I think is exceptionally able. It was interesting listening to my friend Alex Story and the points that he made. It's very hard to disagree with a lot of those, but I would also say, look, I was like the last Japanese soldier on his jungle island arguing the case for the Prime Minister not to be defenestrated. I did the media round, Good Morning Britain and so forth, the day he went, saying that he should not go and saying how wrong I thought it was. But it feels to me like now, like we've got to move forward, and someone like Kemi Badenoch, to me, is a proper Conservative, great free market, small state values, and is somebody too that demonstrates vivid change in the Conservative Party, makes it exceptionally difficult for the Labour Party to run out all their old attack lines, and for me, that's the way of the future.
Sorry about that, Alex. I was misinformed. Suzanne Evans, do you agree with Alex Dean? Should it be Kemi Badenoch? Because right now, not one MP has come out to support her.
If I personally could be the kingmaker, I'd say Kemi Badenoch, absolutely. But what would be the point? Kemi Badenoch will be crucified in the same way that Liz Truss would have been as well. She is seen to be on the right of the party. She's seen to be anti-mass immigration. She's seen to be anti-woke. These were things that Liz Truss stood for, and she's been absolutely ripped apart by it, by the media, by the Liberal Party wing of her own party, by the markets. I'm afraid I don't think Kemi Badenoch would fare any better. I think really and truthfully, the only person that it could be is Boris, and every Conservative member I've spoken to today is saying, bring back Boris. Now, personally, I think Boris is the person that got us into this mess. He was the one that took that very hard line on lockdown, determined to shut down the country, quantitative easing, furlough payments, etc., that have led to the rampant inflation that we've seen. Of course, the big $64 million question is, does Boris Johnson want the job? until we know whether he's actually going to put his name on the ballot paper or not, it's all a little bit of a bit of a pie in the sky exercise. Nobody really knows.
Kathy Gingell, look, I think it's got to be Boris, but actually, if he doesn't put himself in the race, I'd love to see the right unite around Suella Braverman, who I think in her very short stint as Home Secretary showed that she does actually have the balls to take on the blob and make the tough decisions. Do you agree?
Well, of course, Suella Braverman is the only one of this group of four who has any principle, moral courage, or even any place on a moral compass at all. It will be the most cynical of jokes, and it will be the ultimate self-stabbing act of the Conservative Party if they cynically put back in the Prime Minister, who first of all got us into this mess with Rishi Sunak, created the 500 billion lockdown debt that was left for Liz Truss to think, Christ, what am I going to do about that? It's just not feasible. This is a revengeous tragedy that's going on. The Conservative Party is sort of morally void now. Suella Braverman, it will be a poison chalice. Nobody will vote for her anyway. My advice to Suella Braverman and all the decent people in the Conservative Party is resign the whip now. This party is a shameful disgrace. It's completely separate from the country, from the grassroots. I think you tweeted about that yourself yesterday very succinctly. It's showing contempt for what the grassroots wants. Boris is a proven liar. Rishi Sunak didn't have the moral courage to defy lockdown when he knew it was wrong. Who are these people? Penny Mordaunt's economical with the truth. I mean, who would want to be associated with any of them? Leave the party or resign the whip, stand as independents and give the country a chance to vote for people who actually might stand for you, not for their own entitled globalist technocratic interests.
Well, look, I do agree with you, Kathy, that there does need to be some type of fundamental shake-up in our political system, absolutely, because it's democracy itself that seems at threat at the moment. But specifically, Alex Story, I want you to respond, because Kathy had some harsh words there for your man, Boris.
She's completely right. In everything that she said, I'm completely with her. There's nothing about what she said that I disagree with. We've had 12 years of a supposedly Conservative administration that was essentially a continuation of New Labour. The only thing I'm saying is that the principle is the following. Somebody gets elected to power. It is the people of this country who decide whether or not that person gets to keep the job or not. Now, a lot of people, pedants in many ways, say that this is a parliamentary democracy. But the point is that he also won the no confidence vote in June. He also had a very good run at the local elections, where the Labour Party won fewer votes in the south of England than the Conservative Party won in the north of England. The bottom line is, whether you like his morals or not, that's not the point at all. We all agree that the Conservative Party is a sham in all sorts of ways. It's revealed itself in the last few days as a complete joke.
But this is about democracy.
He was elected. It is about democracy.
It's about democracy. No, I think you've made a really good point, Alex. And Suzanne Evans, it was the point I was trying to make to Dominique Samuels earlier. I think there are huge problems in our entire political system. I think democracy is being subverted, and I absolutely believe, I'm going to be talking about it later in the show, there needs to be a shake-up on the right in this country so that there can be a proven force. I agree with all of that. But to me, Suzanne, this decision comes down to democracy. And we need to prove to the blob and the MSM and the political establishment, if they try to subvert democracy, there's going to be trouble. Sorry, did you want to come in, Alex Dean?
I did, just to say that I think one way, I agree with some of the criticisms that were offered of the Conservative Party. Of course, I'm on the right of the party and would like to be more conservative. But one unambiguously conservative thing that this government has done is to deliver Brexit. And I feel that that's under threat, depending on who we choose as our leader to the next piece. And I also think, without going too much into the archaeology, that was a big part of why a lot of people had to go at Boris Johnson. They just could not abide the fact that he delivered on our popular will and got us out of the European Union. I think that was a big thing that did for him.
Absolutely. Final word to you, Suzanne?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I absolutely agree with what you're saying, Dan. We have seen democracy overturned. We've seen the Conservative Party members have their will completely overturned by their own party. I can't see the point of being a member of the Conservative Party anymore. If I was a member, I think I'd be ripping up my membership card and sending it back to HQ, because MPs have completely ignored the person that I would have put into Downing Street, Liz Truss, who I think had a great mandate for the country, and they've just ripped it up and chucked it away. I'm very disappointed she didn't have the personal strength of character to see it through. I'm very disappointed she U-turned. I think she should have stuck to her guns. I'm afraid that first U-turn, she was toast.
Kathy, she was a letdown, wasn't she?
Yeah,
and I had such high hopes.
Yes, it showed a lack of moral character. Again, it comes down to this. People don't like to discuss this, but her first time, as soon as she stabbed Kwasi, and as soon as she stabbed Suella, you can't do that.
Oh, no, it was done. It was done. I'm sorry. The moment she U-turned on the 45p top tax rate, it was done, because they had her, they had won, and she showed that she didn't have the steel of the iron. In saying that, we're going to talk about this later in the show too, I feel deeply sorry for her, because imagine what it feels like to be Liz Truss tonight. It must be very difficult. Conservative woman, editor Kathy Gingell, Conservative commentator Alex Dean, former Conservative parliamentary candidate, co-organiser of the Bring Back Boris petition Alex Story, the political commentator Suzanne Evans. You are all brilliant. Thank you all so much. But who do you agree with out of them? Who should be the next Prime Minister to save the Tory party and Britain? Well, Ali on Twitter says, Boris all the way. He is the only one with a legitimate mandate to govern. This time, however, they won't find it so easy to pull him apart. From Kate, I think Penny could do the job if she has the right team behind her. And the only one that Starmer fears, Sunak, hasn't even been around since Truss won. And from Maureen, Braverman is the only one with the balls to tackle the illegal immigration problem. And your verdict is now in. This is fascinating. 63% of you supporting Boris Johnson, 14% of you backing Rishi Sunak, 10% of you want Penny Mordaunt, and 13% of you backing Suella Braverman. Now, coming up, after Star newsreader Krishnan Guru Murthy's foul-mouthed faux pas targeting Conservative Minister Steve Baker, how can Channel 4 claim to be an unbiased broadcaster? Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie weighs in as tonight's Outsider soon. But first, as Jeremy Hunt and Michael Gove rule themselves out of the race to become PM, are Tory MPs planning a pro-Rishi stitch-up? My great Conservative minds, Daily Mail columnist Andrew Pears and Daily Telegraph Associate Politics Editor Christopher Hope give their expert analysis on that, and I guess what has been a wild day in wobbly Westminster. They're live straight after the break.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. The chair of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady, has confirmed nominations for the Conservative Party leadership will close on Monday and a new leader will be elected by next Friday. But Brady has infuriated grassroots Tories and confirmed fears of a pro-Rishi stish-up after he announced a dubious sounding process to choose the next PM watch.
Candidates will be expected to have at least 100 colleagues nominating them. When we reach 2 final candidates, we will also conduct an indicative ballot so that it is clear what the balance of preference within the parliamentary party is.
COVID authoritarian Ramona, Jeremy Hunt and Snaky Michael Gove have already ruled themselves out of the running as MPs prepare to rally behind the globalist shill Fishy Rishi. Our only hope is to bring back Boris, BBB, who has reportedly have the backing now of 44 MPs, so the early momentum certainly with him. Let me bring in some great Conservative minds now to analyse another extraordinary day in Westminster. I'm joined by the consultant editor at the Daily Mail, Andrew Pearce, and the Daily Telegraph's associate political editor, Christopher Hope. These are the 2 men in the media most tapped into the Conservative Party. So, Christopher, let me start with you, because I think the 1922 committee put this 100 MP threshold in the hope that Boris Johnson wouldn't reach it. I don't know what you're hearing tonight, but all of a sudden, Christopher, there's a lot of momentum behind Boris, and there are some folk, and these are not Boris supporters, telling me, holy mackerel, he's going to make it. He's going to get to the 100.
Well, Dan, Tory MPs break into 3 groups right now. There's the BBB gang, Bring Back Boris. There's the ABS gang, Anyone But Sunak. And the ABB gang, Anyone But Boris. Now, it looks to me like we think there's around 25 Tory MPs that we trust as going for Boris, because lots of lists out there, anonymous names. We're going for actual names, declared people. There's no question that it can't be more. That it can be 2 or 3 candidates, or just one, will go forward at 2 p.m. on Monday. It does look as though the right are trying to unite tonight behind a single candidate. You've got Suella Braverman, maybe. You've got Kemi Badenoch, maybe. But certainly the hope of the Boris supporters is that those 2 might row in behind Boris Johnson and get him over that crucial number. Once it goes to the members, well, look at your poll. 63% of GB News viewers say Boris, and the others are nowhere. So it looks like it's a shoo-in if Boris gets the membership.
Very good point. So, Andrew Pearce, doesn't that mean, because, you know, I love Suella Braverman, I love Kemi Badenoch. I think both of these women have huge futures in the Conservative Party, could well be future Prime Ministers. But surely, Andrew, for the good of the Tory right, they have to put their weight behind Boris now.
I think they do, because otherwise it will be Sunak, the former Chancellor, and in no way can you call him a candidate from the right. Look, both Badenoch and Braverman, they're both 42. They both had very limited cabinet experience. They've hardly been at the top table for very long at all. And I think Tory MPs will be bruised by the outcome of Liz Truss. It was an experiment that went disastrously wrong. I know most of them didn't vote for her, but the party members did. They've got to make sure this time the candidate that goes to the membership is experienced, is strong, is capable, and that candidate, in my view, is Boris Johnson. It will also be, Dan, a very good way to counter the inevitable cries of protest we're going to get from the Labour Party that we've got to have a general election, we've got to have a general election. Well, actually, we don't have to have a general election. We don't have to have an election till the end of 2024. But Boris Johnson is the one candidate in the field who already does have a democratic mandate, because he won that election in 2019 and he won it big, the biggest Tory majority since 1987. And if he wins this time, I think he will surely have learnt the lessons of what he got wrong last time. Lack of attention to detail, not always being truthful, that's an understatement, and also choice of people to have around him, people like that dreadful Deputy Chief Whip Pincher in the Carlton Club. So lessons learned. He would be a better Prime Minister, I think, next time. And I'm hoping that this early indication of the momentum his way shows he's going to get there. I've talked to Suella Braverman's people earlier, and they were far from decided as to whether they were going to run. She can't win. She knows it. And so does Kemi Badenoch know they can't win. She's a future leader for the future, not now. The country's in a dire position. We've got to have a Prime Minister who can do the job and isn't going to implode in 45 days like Liz Truss.
No, couldn't agree more. Christopher Hope, I believe you have been speaking to people close to Boris Johnson today. Of course, he's on holiday somewhere, right? Is he on his way back? Because surely he's got to be pressing the flesh in Westminster, Christopher.
Yeah, well, he's not back tomorrow, I'm pretty certain now. He's back Saturday morning, which means he misses a day of pressing the flesh. There's a big meeting planned amongst Boris supporters for Saturday lunchtime. What he's doing right now is classic Boris. He's saying, what are the numbers? Can I win? He won't stand if he can't get more than 100. One supporter told me tonight, is he up for it? The answer is yes, if he can be persuaded that the numbers exist. So right now, these Boris supporters, it's all about getting those numbers up, showing their boss, Boris Johnson, that when he gets back, the numbers are there. But Andrew, I've agreed with virtually everything Andrew said just then. He's got to change. People with Boris Johnson, Dan, people like the idea of him. The idea of Boris is very attractive. The jokey, the charismatic, I would say a kind man leading the country. The problem is often the man himself disappoints. Andrew went through the issue of lying there. There's all sorts of, and the chaotic nature. He's got to change. He's got to say sorry in order to his MPs, to party members, then the country, and move on. But there is a fire break. The fire break has been given to him by Liz Truss's leadership. They've seen what can happen. Then here's the idea of getting him back with Mark II, because if they don't give it to Boris Johnson, he becomes a Boris-shaped hole at the top of the Tory party, a problem. If Sunak wins, what does Rishi think all the time? Rishi doesn't like, Boris doesn't like Rishi, we all know that. So he'll become part of the soap opera, which will dominate. And for me, it goes back to the original sin. Dumping Johnson was wrong in the summer because it goes against what the electors want in 2019. That's got to be reversed and let Johnson take his chances with the voters. That's how his time in politics should end or start again.
Indeed, because it's democratic. And Andrew, look, I am so conscious of the fact that it will be disastrous for the Conservative Party if there is some stitched-up backroom deal between Sunak and Mordaunt, for example, that manages to keep Boris under the 100 and then the Conservative Party members get no vote. I just think that could be the end of the party for a generation if that's what happens.
It would be really difficult. And of course, Rishi Sunak will be desperate to keep Boris off that ballot paper because he knows if it goes to the membership, he
loses again. He loses again.
Exactly. Liz Truss beat him, and I've got more charisma in my little finger than Liz Truss. In fact, my ironing board is more charismatic.
Oh,
than Liz Truss. Let's be honest. She's got many strengths, but she's got no charisma. And every time she's been in the media as Prime Minister, she didn't enhance her position. She made it worse. So Sunak knows he's got to, at all costs, keep Boris off that ballot paper. So there will be all sorts of machinations going on behind the scenes. We see that Jeremy Hunt is not standing. Well, he came last time, so we know he wasn't going to run. Michael Gove didn't run last time, but he's a great plotter. He's a very big beast in the Tory jungle, and I suspect he would get a huge job from Rishi Sunak if Rishi Sunak becomes leader. In fact, I would think, bye-bye Grant Shapps, it would be Michael Gove as Home Secretary in a Rishi Sunak administration.
Even more reason to keep Sunak out. Well, you two are the big beasts in the Conservative media. Thank you so much. What a busy weekend you're going to have. The Daily Mail's Andrew Pearce and the Daily Telegraph's Christopher Hope will speak next week. But coming up, could Truss have succeeded without the MSM and the political establishment battling against her? And do you actually feel sorry for Britain's shortest-serving Prime Minister? We'll debate in the Media Buzz after 10. But first, does this hot mic moment where Christian Guru Murthy had something quite terrible to say about a Tory minister prove that actually Channel 4 is a biased broadcaster rather than the impartial news organisation it purports to be? Fleet Street legend Calvin McKenzie, he's up as tonight's outsider in just 2 minutes' time.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Calvin Mackenzie is tonight's outsider. Now, another casualty of the Liz Truss resignation is the ridiculous illusion of Channel 4 being an impartial news organisation. Here's a reminder of what happened last night when their lead presenter, Christian Guru Murthy, was caught delivering a foul-mouthed outburst about Steve Baker following an interview with the Tory minister. Look.
Steve Baker, thank you very much indeed. Thanks a lot, Steve. It wasn't a stupid question, Steve. You know it. I'm very happy to go up against you on Trust any day. What a
Unbelievable. Channel 4 bosses have decided to take action, releasing this statement today. Channel 4 has a strict code of conduct for all its employees, including its programming teams and on-air presenters, and takes any breaches seriously. Following an off-air incident, Channel 4 news anchor Christian Guru Murthy has been taken off air for a week. However, Calvin Mackenzie, can we really expect him to be cured of his left-wing bias in just 7 days?
It's ridiculous. Right, so first of all, the only reason he apologised, and he claimed that this action was beneath his usual standards. Well, I would say, having watched him now for the last 24 years, he makes probably 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 a year. What a fantastic gig he's got. All he has to do basically is be vile to Tory politicians. And that's the truth about the matter. The Channel 4 would be delighted to say that they represented the left of centre of news. And of course, it was for that reason that Boris said, right, well, actually, if you're really worth £1 billion, which is what Channel 4 is allegedly worth, then we might as well sell it. And then somebody commercially can decide whether having between 7 and 8 prime time, as you know, because you put Nigel Farage on at 7 till 8, at prime time, we'll let adverts sell in that space because nobody watches it. But the truth about the matter is that Channel 4 forced him to apologise like that, suspended him, not because they believe any of this thing, oh, it's beneath us, we're so sorry, we've got strict rules and all that crap. The reason they did it is because they are concerned that whoever becomes the next Tory Prime Minister, and I'm very surprised that your name hasn't been mentioned in that respect, Dan, right? Whoever becomes Tory Prime Minister will reactivate the idea of flogging Channel 4. So that's the real reason, because they hate the idea that the spotlight, thanks to Krishnan, has fallen on their anti-Tory bias. And actually, I really like the reaction of the minister who was described as the C word when he said, actually, he said, I actually would like to see the guy fired for it. It did make me laugh, because normally, because most obsequious sort of arse-licking politicians would then say, oh, I quite understand. Thank you very much for the apology, Christian. I quite understand this kind of thing happens occasionally. He said, no, it doesn't. Wallop. Out the door you get. By the way, can I just raise one other point with you,
Yes,
Dan?
please.
Can I raise one other point? I saw those couple of right-wing no-hopers, Andrew and
Oh, no, they're brilliant, Calvin.
Anyway, I just thought I'd just say about them. They are talking complete tosh. There is no chance whatsoever of Boris ending up. He won't get 100. I'd be astonished if he got 50 votes.
He's already got 44.
There is no love for
declared.
Boris.
He's already got 44 declared.
Right, well, I think that will
already.
be his lot. They've all piled in nice and early to make sure that the Boris Brigade look as though they're strong. He's never... OK, write this down. Remember, I was the guy that said that this
I'm going to, because I think you're wrong.
Right, a disaster for the
that.
Conservative Party and a disaster for the country. And I turned out to be right. And a huge pile-on came from GB News viewers onto me, and I still get it now. They absolutely go mad.
You didn't give her a chance.
Boris has no chance whatsoever. Now, I like Boris. We are in a very difficult hole. We owe 70-odd billion quid. We need somebody who understands that 2 and 2 equals 4. It doesn't equal, 6 1/4. Plus, we've got some money down the back of the sofa. We are through that. We are up to our neck in debt, Dan. And unfortunately, I'm a conservative, and I suspect that Boris is not the man to lead us to the promised land.
OK, well, look, we're going to have to continue this debate next week, Calvin Mackenzie, because let me tell you, that globalist shill, fishy Rishi Sunak, who backstabbed Boris for 1 year, is not the answer either, mate. But look, we've got to have to discuss
Boris
this
won't
next
even
week,
be
Calvin.
there when the Partygate thing comes through. He'll be slung out on his arse. It'll have lasted less time than Liz Truss. It's an impossible thing. We cannot have 6 Tory Prime Ministers in 6 years. Please, Dan, bring a piece of intellect to this discussion.
He won an 80-seat majority. BBB, Calvin. We'll talk next week.
If I took on Jeremy Corbyn, I would have got a 150-seat majority. This was the most left-wing, the biggest dud in history, and Brexit. There is no possibility of Boris being on the ticket. And if he is, he'll be on the ticket for half an hour before being slung out by the Commons. The Tory MPs are never, ever voting for him.
Calvin Mackenzie, time will tell. We will see on Monday night. Thank you, Calvin. It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, just like with Boris Johnson, they got her in the end. The MSM, the political establishment, globalists and Ramonas have succeeded in ousting yet another Tory leader from Downing Street and making the tragically weak Liz Truss the shortest-serving Prime Minister in history.
I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
So we've been sadly proven wrong in thinking she could be the next Iron Lady, but did Truss have a hope in hell of succeeding given the forces working against her? And do you feel sorry for the outgoing PM? I'll ask my superstar panel, Conservative commentator Dominic Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey and author and broadcaster Amy Nicol next. Plus, we'll reveal how the first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages are covering this historic day and whether it will be Rishi Sunak or Boris Johnson at number 10 as soon as Monday. With the Conservative Party disintegrating, does the UK need a new anti-woke political force on the right? And what do you reckon to our very own Nigel Farage taking the helm? That's our big debate at 10:30. How can Channel 4 really claim to be an impartial organisation when its star newsreader says this about a Tory MP?
What a
Legendary comedian and woke slayer-in-chief Jim Davison takes down Christian guru Murthy and gives his unique take on Truss's time in charge. He's uncancelled at 10:40. Plus, he's the man whose bombshell book shone a light on the cracks in the Windsor family and exposed Meghan as a narcissistic sociopath in the eyes of palace staff. Now, Valentine Lowe reveals whether the royal truce is holding 1 month after the Queen's funeral. He joins me live in the studio at 10:20. And if that interview doesn't get the palace all shook up, this certainly will.
Opens her mouth and hand grenades come out. She wants to tear down the temple.
Let's go for it.
What the hell is she doing?
I won't go quietly. I'll battle till the end.
Yes, that's a first look at the highly controversial new series of The Crown that has left King Charles raging. I'll bring you more in the Media Buzz shortly. Plus, I'll name the final Greatest Britain and Union Jackass of the week before the night is out too. But first, the news headlines at 10 with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, as you've been hearing, a new Prime Minister will be elected by the end of next week, with Liz Truss standing down earlier today after just 44 days in the job. Announcing her resignation outside 10 Downing Street, the Prime Minister said she's been unable to deliver the mandate on which she had been elected. She'll become the shortest-serving Prime Minister in British history when she leaves office.
I recognise, though, given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party. This morning I met the chairman of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady. We've agreed that there will be a leadership election to be completed within the next week.
Well, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, doesn't want a leadership election. He's calling now for a general election.
Well, what a mess. And this is not just a soap opera at the top of the Tory party. It's doing huge damage to our economy and to the reputation of our country. And the public are paying with higher prices, with higher mortgages. So we can't have a revolving door of chaos. We can't have another experiment at the top of the Tory party. There is an alternative, and that's a stable Labour government. And the public are entitled to have their say, and that's why there should be a general election.
Well, in the race to replace Liz Truss, the political website Guido Fawkes claims Boris Johnson now has plenty to build up to the required backing from Tory MPs. He has 48 backers. Rishi Sunak has 32 and Penny Mordaunt has 15. Those numbers are being updated all the time, and those numbers are out of the 100 minimum required. Meanwhile, the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, says there are no words to describe the utter shambles, as she calls it, the Tories are in.
I don't see, firstly, how there is any possibility of this dysfunctional, broken Tory party uniting behind any alternative Prime Minister, as I said a moment ago, let alone one that would be in the public interest. But all of these names, I mean, Boris Johnson, it is ridiculous to suggest that a Prime Minister who just, 2 or 3 months ago, resigned in deep disgrace could come back and be Prime Minister again. And if that happens, all that does is prove beyond a shadow of a doubt of how utterly broken UK Westminster politics is.
Well, in news away from Westminster, people working with children should be legally required to report cases of child sexual abuse or face prosecution themselves. That's one of the key findings of an independent 7-year inquiry. It says some institutions are failing to protect children and calls for a new child protection authority to be established in England and Wales. Within the last hour, a jury has found Kevin Spacey is not liable in a civil sex abuse trial. The House of Cards actor was accused of sexual abuse towards Star Trek actor Anthony Rapp. Jurors found Mr. Rapp didn't prove his claim that Mr. Spacey had made unwanted sexual advances on him when he was 14. You are up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Time now for part 2 of Dan Wootton Tonight.
Tomorrow's news tonight now on our Media Buzz. Historic front pages are in. These are all really dramatic, actually, especially the Daily Mirror, which calls for a general election now. Worst PM we've ever had is the Metro headline, as Truss's resignation after just 44 days makes her the shortest-serving PM in British history. The Guardian now says the bitter end, and they describe Liz Truss's, quote, inevitable resignation. But this is the one we've all been waiting for. Come on, isn't it? Let us rejoice, say the Daily Star, after the paper's plucky vegetable, which has been locked in a historic battle with the real Liz Truss, outlasted the PM who they say wilted in the political heat. And how did the Star's leafy hero celebrate? With a cheeky bottle of fizz and a sausage roll, of course. My superstar panel are back with me now. The political commentator Dominic Samuels, the former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. Well, it was a day that both the Tory party and Liz Truss will want to forget, which is a shame, given it will be forever consigned to the history books. This afternoon, the Prime Minister's Downing Street nightmare ended as she bowed to pressure to resign, bringing to a close the shortest premiership in history.
I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party, that there will be a leadership election to be completed within the next week. This will ensure that we remain on a path to deliver our fiscal plans and maintain our country's economic stability and national security.
The problem is, Truss had turned off people, even like me, who supported her. Her position was no longer tenable after a string of U-turns, devastating cabinet exits and the chaotic scenes of last night's fracking vote of confidence motion that has now been investigated over claims the Tory MP's been manhandled and bullied. The biggest tragedy, however, is that Liz could have been a PM for the ages. Despite the wrinkle of rising inflation, her bold tax cut plans would have helped Britain become the fastest growing major economy this year, the IMF conceded, but only after economic scaremongers in the mainstream media ripped her to shreds. They coerced her into axing best mate Kwasi Kwarteng as Chancellor, which opened the door for a globalist Remainer coup led by his replacement Jeremy Hunt. That's why I've actually, and this might surprise you, but I've been feeling sorry for Truss these past few days. The pain of realising she had been duped into a death spiral was etched all over her face at last week's presser following Kwarteng's sacking and her infamous silence appearance at PMQs this week. And look, Sean Bailey, I think the odds were stacked against her. I think the moment she U-turned, she was finished. The moment they sensed that weakness, she was gone. But it actually has been quite vile to watch the glee of the left and of the establishment in completely destroying a woman who, let's be honest, had a mandate from her party to deliver these reforms.
It goes deeper than that. The mandate comes from the British public. Our system means you elect a Prime Minister and a party on a manifesto, and that manifesto is carried out. So that's what she was trying to do. I think Keir Starmer and the ilk need to be very careful because they're setting precedents that they'll have to deal with in the future. And if we're going to deal with people in this horrific way, these very, very personal attacks and the destruction of people, please let's not hear any bleating from them when it's their turn, because I do think it's coming. But look, Liz said it herself. She wished she had communicated what she wanted to do in a better way around her mini budget. It's very easy to look back now with the benefit of hindsight and say, what is it, a disaster? It was. But what she should have done is stuck to her guns. I spoke to politicians across the political spectrum at many different levels, and they all said she'd have stuck to her guns. But actually, what I think she should have done is explained what she was doing far more clearly. She should have tested the markets. What this country knows is if you surprise the markets, they react badly. She shouldn't have surprised them. But what's interesting, the mainstream media talked about the pound, but they never talked about when it went back up. They only talked about when it went down.
Of course, because they had an agenda. Dominic Samuels, do you feel sorry for Liz Truss?
I feel sorry for the people of this country more than I do Liz Truss, unfortunately, because I think what they're witnessing now is that we live in sort of an illusion of democracy. Maybe it's always been that way, I don't know, but since...
It's got worse.
It's gotten worse, and what we've seen is that the men in grey suits, people who we didn't elect, who we don't know who they are. It seems that, you know, within the civil service, within Downing Street, they already have an agenda that they've decided that we're going to act upon as a country. So it doesn't matter what PM comes through the revolving door. If you don't do what they say, they'll throw you out. And I think we've seen that, so I will say that. However, I will say that we did sort of see the future of Liz's premiership during her campaign, unfortunately, when she U-turned on that proposed pay cut for public sector workers.
Outside of London.
Outside of London.
The moment she announced it, exactly. Amy Nicole, the Be Kind left don't seem to have any problem in tearing down female elected Prime Minister.
I don't see any tearing down. I just see really factual criticism of what's happened.
Do you feel sorry for Liz Truss?
I don't. I feel sorry for the people who voted Conservative and then saw their mortgages
of you, Amy.
rise by £500 because of the irresponsibility of the decisions that Liz Truss made. And last night I thought, can one person take this much? But then I saw her stand at the podium today, smirking, and she didn't apologise to those people. Because I don't think...
She has apologised.
She has apologised.
She didn't apologise.
She did. She apologised for any...
She apologised in the BBC interview and she apologised in the House of Commons yesterday. And to be honest, Sean, when she was at that podium today, I'm sorry, what I saw was a broken woman who is facing a legacy of disaster. The Metro's already declared her the worst Prime Minister ever.
Do you know what she's facing? A very lucrative career of after-dinner speeches and £115,000 a year for the rest of
Keir Starmer.
Hold on. Here's
the thing. Here's what's really interesting about the way Keir Starmer and the Labour Party and the left speak. When this country had to face austerity, they talked about it, they blamed the Tories for it, but they forgot that they were the people who made it happen. And you're seeing it happen again. Keir Starmer has forgotten to point out that he was in favour of everything Liz did except the 45p cut. And even that, she was just bringing it back to the level it was under Labour. So it's very interesting to hear Keir Starmer talk about these things, knowing that he was in support.
And her policies were right. Her policies were right. The delivery was wrong. And I'm not afraid to say that I feel desperately sorry for Liz Truss. I have criticised her over the past couple of weeks. But to see a woman that broken and that destroyed facing... And I know she's going to get her money, Amy, but she wasn't in this for the money. Think of what her legacy is. Think of what her future is facing. I feel desperately sorry for the woman. And I said that they were going to destroy her, and they succeeded.
I think she just seemed pretty nonplussed.
She wasn't ready. She was not
and I think that she knows that her future is
do you know what? Come on. Did you see the haunted look on her face?
No.
In those last couple of public appearances?
It was. I expected to, and I was shocked to not see
Listen.
There are serious concerns for her mental health.
As someone who's had the British press focus their ire on him, I can tell you for a fact she was not smirking out of anything other than distress.
I think you should have concern for the thousands of people's mental health who have seen their finances destroyed at the hands of one tiny decision
that's not true.
That could have been checked for the OBR. That wasn't
It's not true.
But this is the
check her, Sean.
Exactly.
Fact check her now.
This is the thing. When the IMF came out against her plans, they reluctantly then came to the conclusion that her plans would make this the fastest growing economy in Europe. They also didn't admit that we're in a much better condition than any other European nation.
Indeed. Now, look, amidst the chaos of yet another prime ministerial coup, Just Stop Oil, that group who have wreaked havoc on the country with acts of eco-terrorism, attempted to steal the limelight from Liz Truss. Today, they claim the ownership of this attack on luxury department store Harrods, spraying the windows of the London institution with orange paint. 2 activists were arrested on suspicion of causing criminal damage. The public's fury with these protests has reached boiling point, and no wonder. Here's how infuriated passers-by reacted to the blocking of a road near Harrods today, which resulted in 18 arrests for obstruction of a highway, but not fast enough in my view. Look.
Move from the road, please. Why don't you not take it to the open? No, people got places to be instead of wasting time. I'm not harming them.
There's too many of us, mate. There's too many.
Believe me, this is going to get worse if the police Keep standing by watching this sort of madness. Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Dominic Samuels, my superstar panel. Do stand by, because coming up, with the Conservative Party seemingly disintegrating, does the UK need a new anti-woke political force on the right? And should our very own Nigel Farage lead the way? The Media Buzz returns at 10:30. But first, he's the man whose bombshell book shone a light in exposing Meghan as a, quote, narcissistic sociopath in the eyes of palace staff. Now Valentine Lowe reveals what happened next. He's live straight after the break.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. Now, rumours of the Sussexes being nightmare employers with accusations of bullying have long circulated despite the couple's protests. In fact, I wrote back in November 2018 that Meghan and Kate had fallen out over the Duchess of Sussex's treatment of royal staff. And after years of being forced into silence, the stories of Harry and Meghan's courtiers are finally taking centre stage thanks to the highly respected royal correspondent for The Times, Valentine Lowe, who has diligently covered the monarchy for a quarter of a century. Courtiers, the hidden power behind the crown, documents the words of actual staff members, self-referred to as the Sussex Survivor Squad, who have accused Meghan of being a, quote, narcissistic sociopath who persistently bullied them and reduced them to tears. And that's just the start of the allegations. One source told the book that during a walkabout in Fiji, Meghan is reported to have said, "I can't believe I'm not getting paid for this," while another alleges that the Duchess threatened to dump Harry unless he released his first statement eviscerating the media and confirming their relationship. According to insiders speaking to Lowe, Harry was terrified of becoming an also-ran once his nephew Prince George turned 18 and stole his thunder, while Meghan thought she was going to be the Beyoncé of the UK. And I'm delighted to say that Valentine joins me now. Now, Valentine, look, this is a brilliant book. I've just been on holiday. I've read the whole thing. It is one of the most sensational royal books in a long time, packed with revelations. And actually, the first thing I was thinking, were you worried at all about legal repercussions? Because what we know is that Harry and Meghan have been very trigger happy in terms of calling up the folk at Shillings, or were you so confident in your sources? Because, of course, the accusations against them, which are there in black and white, include the fact that they were serial bullies towards their staff members.
Well, you're always going to be concerned about the legal aspect, but Dan, This wasn't my first rodeo.
Yes.
I've been there before with my bullying story when I documented how the allegations of bullying had been made against Meghan by her communications secretary. And that I spent a long time working with the Times' lawyer, making sure it was legally watertight.
And you had the receipts there, didn't you? Because you actually uncovered the email that was sent by the royal courtier.
Exactly. So we had the email that was sent up the chain in Kensington Palace, making the allegation. So we worked very hard in conjunction with the law, making sure that was watertight. And before we published, the Sussex lawyers, Shillings, who are a very aggressive firm, they sent us all sorts of letters, threatening, denying everything, making all sorts of accusations against us. So, after publication, not a whisper.
No.
Yeah.
No, because when you read the book, I mean, you have a lot of very shocking detail which has never been uncovered before. Like, for example, the moment where in a particular meeting, Meghan has torn strips off a young female staff member. She is so upset, you reveal, that she's actually comforted by Prince William, and at that moment breaks down in tears. So this actually feels like a full-throttled campaign of bullying over a number of months by Harry and Meghan, based on what you've written in this book.
Well, certainly that's what people who are at the receiving end believed it. I can't say whether it was bullying, Dan, because I wasn't there. Bullying. It's a very loaded word, and one person's bullying is another person's firm management style. So I can't pass a judgment on it, but I know that several people were quite broken working there. And when you hear about people saying at the time that, when they're about to have a meeting with Meghan and they're very worried about how it's going to go, when they say things like, I'm shaking, I feel sick, it's not a good workplace, that, is it? It's not a good workplace.
And so why do you think Harry and Meghan were allowed to get away with this for so long, and then go on the Oprah Winfrey show and on CBS in the US and actually claim that they were the victims and it was their mental health that had been badly impacted?
Well, there are two questions there, aren't there? The first is, how were they able to get away with it for so long? And the answer really is the palace didn't know what to do with it. They hadn't confronted a situation like this before. And as someone put it to me, everyone within the sort of palace structure was too genteel and civil, and they were run over by Harry and Meghan. Then they go on Oprah, and I think what you have to understand about Harry and Meghan is they truly believe, not without any foundation whatsoever, I mean, they do have a case, they truly believe that they were the victims, that they were treated appallingly by the palace management.
Their truth.
Their truth, yeah.
Which is often different to reality. However, you do point out in the book that there is a suspicion amongst their former staff members, who now, by the way, refer to themselves as the Sussex survivors.
Yes, they survived a lot, I guess.
Yes. There is a suspicion amongst some of those staff members that actually Meghan in particular never wanted this to work out. She always wanted the narrative to be that she was the victim so she could do exactly what she has now gone and done. Leave the royal family, present herself as someone who was the subject of racism and bullying and earn a lot of money from it. Do you think that theory, which the staff members clearly believe, holds any weight?
It's based on things like, at the very beginning, around the time that Harry released that statement eviscerating the media when Meghan was first revealed as his girlfriend, she was saying things like, oh, I know how it works here, you're not going to help the girlfriend. So she was kind of portraying herself as a victim right from the start. Now, whether that amounts to it was an exit strategy right from the start, I don't know. I mean, I don't think such a thought was in her head, but maybe subconsciously she didn't really see herself as really fitting in with the royal family. But, what was noticeable, that, in those early days, if we take it up to the time of their engagement, ostensibly she was making a big effort. I mean, I was always struck by, in that engagement interview, she was absolutely, she drank the Kool-Aid. She was talking about how she was going to devote herself to the Commonwealth. It was like they'd had a meeting, and these were the strategy points, and she was getting the strategy points over in that interview. And I thought that was very noticeable. So, you know, she behaved initially as though she wanted to do it.
But remember, she hadn't spent much time actually in the UK by that point.
No.
And I think my perception of it, and obviously I covered it quite closely at that point, was that she came over, realised, oh my goodness, this is going to be very hard work. I'm not going to have lots of minions running around after me. I'm going to have to be heading up to Nottinghamshire to open up the local community centre. That wasn't the sort of life that she wanted. And I mean, it's such a shocking line that you reveal on this Australian tour, that she said, am I not getting paid for this? She has a mindset, a very Hollywood American mindset, that actually any work that she did, she deserved to get paid. Now, the argument, of course, is that she was getting paid a huge amount from the public purse, wasn't she? I mean, she was living in a mansion in Kensington Palace at that point.
It's a shocking line, but you've got to be careful about how you interpret it. Because...
What do you think she did?
It could have been a joke. It certainly could have been meant in a jocular kind of way. Regardless of what she actually meant by it, I think what it does reveal is that she thought of things in terms of making money. That's the kind of mindset, that's the approach she had. Whether, I suspect she didn't literally mean, why am I not getting paid for this? It was more that, God, look at all these people turning out for me. It's amazing, you get paid for this sort of stuff. So I think she probably meant it lightly, but it revealed a certain amount about her mindset.
Now, since you've written your book, of course, there has been this seismic change. The death of the late Queen. Harry and Meghan were welcomed back into the family, despite the fact that there is this huge feud going on between Harry and Meghan, and especially William and Kate, but also Charles and Camilla, who are maybe trying a little bit harder to sort things out. They've now gone back to America, still planning the big tell-all Netflix documentary. The autobiography has been pushed back to next year. From your current reporting since writing this book, do you sense any sense that there is a thaw going on in the relations between Harry and Meghan and the royal family, or are they just as bad as before the Queen's death?
I think when they were here for the Queen's death, there was nothing whatsoever that suggested there might be a thaw. But there was a very interesting interview in Variety that Meghan gave to Variety this week.
Yes.
And what was noticeable about that was that she wasn't harping on about the past. She wasn't criticising the royal family. Now, whether this is Meghan herself changing her approach, or whether it's different advisors, because we read that she's got rid of their old PR company, Sunshine Sachs, whichever it is, this looks like a different approach. And maybe they're being more conciliatory. Maybe they're trying not to open up the old wounds again. I don't know, but it gives me grounds for optimism.
Yeah. Although the critical point I think you reveal in your book, it was the Queen herself who made the final decision about the Megxit arrangements for Harry and Meghan. So they can try and blame the men in grey suits, the courtiers, as much as they want. But actually, it was the Queen in the end who put her foot down and
Absolutely,
said, you can't be half in and half out.
And yet, of course, Meghan carries on in portraying herself as having a warm relationship with the Queen.
Do you think the Queen felt that way?
Who knows? It's a shame she's not around to tell us.
Yes, indeed. That would be quite an interview. But look, it's an absolute brilliant book. Royal correspondent for The Times, author of Courtiers, the Hidden Power Behind the Throne. Valentine Lowe, thank you so much for being here.
Dan, thank you.
Now, coming up, one of Britain's best-loved comedians, Jim Davidson, brings some much-needed levity on this dark day in politics. He gives his verdict on Truss, Christian Guru Murthy's, C-bomb and more in Uncancelled at 10:40. But first, could the ousting of Truss lead to a right-wing political revolution? And as Nigel Farage, the man to lead the charge? My superstar panel will give their verdict, plus there's more of tomorrow's wince-inducing front pages and a first look at the controversial new series of The Crown, all in the Media Buzz next.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christie's. I'm not here to mess around with all the biggest topics and guests. You will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now on our Media Buzz. These are historic newspaper front pages. The Eye says Liz Truss gone in 44 days. With a new PM expected to be announced by Friday next week, she will be the shortest serving PM in history. Voters demand general election to pick the new PM, says The Independent. The paper reports that within hours of Truss resigning, 250,000 people signed their campaign to let the public choose at the ballot box. Their campaign follows Keir Starmer's earlier call for voters to be given a say. Bojo, I'll be back. Please God. That is the Sun's front page. But it says Rishi Sunak, though, is the favourite to replace Truss, and in an editorial, The Sun says, a front-page editorial, not a second longer can be wasted on these deranged civil wars. Then we cross to the Daily Express. He couldn't he? Asks the Express. As rumours continue to swirl that Boris could be on the brink of a sensational comeback. Polls continue to show that the former PM is still the favourite among Tory grassroots, and rightfully so. The Times also follows the trends and leads with Boris Johnson's possible return to power. By their count, more than 20 MPs are backing him, although that number is said to be high as 48, according to Guido Fawkes. I can save party from election wipeout, Boris tells the Tories. That's according to the Daily Telegraph. The former PM is reported to be privately urging Conservative MPs to back him. As he's their only chance of election victory, he's also said to be pressing his former Chancellor Sunak to reach out and get back together. My superstar panel getting back together now. The political commentator Dominique Samuels, the former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicole. Now, Slippery Starmer has wasted no time capitalising on the chaos he orchestrated with the MSM by calling for a general election.
What a mess. And this is not just a soap opera at the top of the Tory party. It's doing huge damage to our economy and to the reputation of our country. There is an alternative, and that's a stable Labour government. And the public are entitled to have their say, and that's why there should be a general election.
With Labour frightening favourites to win a landslide majority against a collapsing Conservative Party, is a new anti-woke political force on the right, the UK's only hope now of being saved from a hellish socialist coalition. Well, the natural leader for such a movement would be our very own Nigel Farage, but he told me last night that for it to be successful, he'd need some high-profile Tories to join him. Watch.
I absolutely could not do that on my own. It would need, several major figures to recognise the Conservative Party is dead. Now, whether Suella Braverman or others like that have got the courage to strike out and do this, I don't know.
So Dominic Samuels, is a revolution on the right now the only hope to save conservatism in the UK?
I think that's what's definitely needed. And I think that this mentality that we always have to vote for the least worst option, which is, of course, the Conservatives, I think that mentality is inherently flawed because what that does is it encourages complacency and it really does stop us from actually progressing properly.
But isn't that because of our electoral system? I mean, if you want there to be a new force on the political right, don't you also have to back proportional representation for it to happen?
And yes, this is the difficult thing. I'm not all the way for proportional representation.
How does it happen then? Because the problem is, right, say there's a big force launched by Farage. Let's just be practical about this. What it does is in the individual seats, it splits the vote between the Tories and whatever this new right-wing political force was and lets Labour through, or the Lib Dems through.
There could be an electoral pact, the same sort of pact that was made between the Brexit Party and the Tories, which obviously helped them get elected, which a lot of people actually haven't forgiven Nigel Farage for, actually, and I love Nigel for that. But, you know, a lot of people have said you actually did let the Tories get through when you did such a pact. So
but it was the only way to make Brexit happen.
Yeah, but you could do that with smaller right-wing
But the Tories are never going to do that, Sean Bailey. Your lot are never going to agree to an electoral pact with the new right-wing
You've
force.
said a couple of things, both of you, that are correct, which leads me to say no. Yes, you would end up letting Labour through. I disagree. I think what Nigel's pact did was make sure that Brexit was delivered. So actually, from his...
I'm not. But the reason I'm saying that isn't because I'm saying that it was wrong that he did that, but I'm saying that it demonstrates that there is a possibility, not between the Tories, but between smaller right-wing parties. They could have an electoral pact to make sure their vote share is a lot stronger.
There absolutely is not, because these parties don't exist.
They do.
They don't.
You've got the Heritage Party, you've got Reclaim,
They don't.
You've
And I
got
tell you,
Reform,
They
you've
don't.
got UKIP.
Listen.
You've got UKIP that won 4 million votes in 2015 and got
they
one
don't
seat.
exist in a footprint of 70 million people. They don't have the resources, they don't have the campaigning skill
If they pulled
to win.
their resources together, they absolutely
We're
could.
going to have to agree to disagree on that. They don't, OK?
Amy Nicole?
I'd say the main issue is there's not an appetite for these types of parties.
Yes, there
Oh, really?
No, there is here. It's a fringe movement. There is
It's not a fringe
It does
movement.
not have the mainstream appeal. The only thing I do worry about... So, at the moment...
Do you think the war on woke, protecting Britain's borders, are fringe issues?
The war,
Because I
the
don't.
war on woke
I don't.
is all living in your head, I think.
No, it's not, Amy.
But
it's the most important issue facing the world today.
The link between the chaos and downfall of a Conservative government to you saying we need an anti-woke party. No, we don't. We need an anti-Conservative party.
Well, we have one of those, and they've lost the last...
We have an anti-Conservative party right now
Labour Party.
called the Conservative
Now,
Party.
if the Labour Party flop and push the country into chaos, then perhaps there might be movement for what you're describing.
But Sean,
which
isn't
would
one
be
of the issues...
terrifying, but it's not going to happen because Labour are going to...
become such a broad church that there are serious divides within the party. You've got the ERG on the right, you've got the One Nation group on the left, and they are virtually operating as separate entities within one umbrella.
There's no doubt there's a massive rift in the party. This situation and the leadership contest made those rifts worse. But why the Conservative Party has done so well for this country over a long time is because they are a broad church. And I'd actually say to Nigel and the likes, it's far better for them to get in the boat and bully Conservative MPs.
You want Nigel Farage to join the Conservative Party?
Oh, I'd love it. We need someone to represent that.
You've treated him terribly over the years.
On the back benches.
Hold on, let's
shouting
be clear.
into the wind.
Let's be clear. When Nigel and the fringe parties, when I was discussing, had a goal, the Conservatives delivered on that. We need those voices.
What have the Conservatives delivered on in regards to immigration?
Brexit.
Which is working out
Hold on. Oh, my good gosh. I'm trying to tell you what Nigel set out to do and what Nigel did and how he achieved that. That's a fact. It's not my opinion.
What? I'm saying
Nigel
stood up.
Nigel stood up in the European Parliament and said, I will take this country out of the European Parliament. He did that by cajoling Conservative
Without Nigel Farage,
MPs.
the Conservative parties will never...
What's a Conservative Party success? And you can't say Brexit and you can't say vaccine rollout. Can you name a few more?
The last 4 elections.
But what's the country how is the country benefiting? From
Hold on.
What's the current state of the country?
But this is the thing, Amy. This is. I hesitate. I don't like telling you wrong, but let's be clear.
Everything. The Labour Party is worse.
Because they had Corbyn. They had Corbyn who was going to nationalise everything. That would have been wrong. That would have destroyed the country. You have a party that picks bits out of history so that we forget the pulpits of their performance. Remember, they invented all the economic mess we had last time.
Economic mess?
Yes,
Look at
austerity.
the country right now, today.
Austerity came from the Labour Party.
There, absolutely.
Yes.
Now, look, get your little black revenge dresses out because the hotly anticipated and highly controversial 5th season of Netflix show The Crown will premiere imminently, and we've just been given a special preview, the trailer for the royal drama, which has angered the palace, ex-PM Sir John Major and even Dame Judi Dench, who has demanded Netflix add a disclaimer over its liberties with the truth, features a whole new cast, including Elizabeth Debicki and Dominic West, and explores the war between Charles and Diana, the Windsor Castle fire, and, I'm sorry, Prince William, he's not going to like this, that notorious Martin Bashir panorama documentary. This is going to cause a lot of waves. Look.
Remember the one condition, the one rule. You remain loyal to this family.
You've been silent.
Yes, it's a system, for better or for worse. We're all stuck in it. It feels it's all about to erupt.
She opens her mouth and hand grenades come out. She wants to tear down the temple.
Let's go for it.
What the hell is she doing?
I won't go quietly. I'll battle till the end.
Wow. The Crown out on the 9th of November, just over 2 weeks. By that time, who knows, maybe we'll have had another Prime Minister. The way things are going, Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Dominic Samuels, 2 Stone 5 is coming up. My superstar panel return to nominate the final Greatest Britain and Union Jackass of the week. But first, legendary British comedian, woke slayer-in-chief Jim Davidson takes down the potty-mouthed Christian guru Murthy and gives his unique take on Truss's time in charge. Jim Davidson uncancelled in mere seconds after we have a look at what's coming up on Monday's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, the unthinkable has happened, the Westminster blob has won, and Britain is once again without a leader, but not for long. As a new PM rises from the ashes of the Tory party, I'll welcome analysis from the country's biggest newsmakers, commentators and political insiders. Plus, Andrew Jimson, the man behind a bombshell new book on Boris Johnson, gives his verdict on whether the former PM could make a shock return. And there's opinion galore from my superstar panel, Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, Sunday Mirror political editor Nigel Nelson and former Brexit Party MEP Belinda DeLucy. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GBNews.
But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And tonight I'm joined by our favourite comedian and woke slayer, Jim Davidson. Jim, what a day, a historic day. Are you sad to see Liz Truss go?
Well, I don't know whether I'd like to be Liz Truss now or poor old Sean sitting on that sofa getting henpecked by them two. I'm not sad to see Liz to go. I've never heard anything like it in my life. Poor old Sean, stick up for yourself, my son. I love you. Anyway, look, I listened to David Mellor today, and he spoke a lot of sense. People have got no idea. She's got no parliamentary skills. She doesn't do the walk, she doesn't do the talk, she doesn't look as if she's capable of doing the job. And he said a great line, Dan. He said she thinks charisma is the 25th of December. Fantastic.
I mean, look, I will agree with you, Jim. Her downfall has been very painful to watch. I mean, and I say this as someone who backed Truss, particularly as she actually began by showing such promise in the leadership race versus Fishy Rishi Sunak. I mean, I want to show you this, Jim. Do you remember this immortal line at the GB News People's Forum with Alistair Stewart?
I thought you had high quality standards at GB News, but
we do.
It's not the BBC. You know, you actually get your facts right.
Ms. Truss,
Enough already.
Look, Jim, look at that laugh. She had charisma there. She was on fire then, Jim. What happened?
No, she had no charisma. She looks like someone that's got out of the audience and had a go. You know, everyone thinks it's easy. Where are the statesmen? Where are all the people? They've all gone. They've all gone.
Well, look, it all went downhill, I think, from that moment, Jim, and we've put together some of the most crazy happenings from this 44-day reign. Watch and
Today, we have cut stamp duty. We've allowed businesses to keep more of their own money to invest, to innovate and to grow. We have cut income tax and national insurance for millions of workers.
Have you taken the keys to the country and crashed the economy?
What I have done is I've taken decisive action to deal with a very, very difficult economic situation.
And the Conservative Party will always be the party of low taxes.
The Prime Minister and I agreed yesterday to reverse almost all the tax measures announced in the growth plan 3 weeks ago.
I am a fighter and not a quitter.
I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
Oh, Jim.
What? But they just set her up to fail, Dan. Didn't someone tell her not to do that? She's a Prime Minister, not a carp fisherman. I caught one this big yesterday. It's crazy. I think she was set up to fail. Bring back Boris. And do you know the funny thing? What made me laugh
Jim,
the most?
are you back in Boris?
Yeah. What, do you know what, Dan, what really made me laugh is the fact that Jacobs Rees-Mogg throwing people into the division lobby. He couldn't throw a biro refill into it. And, you know, these Conservative MPs were trying to flee, so much so that they didn't want to be anywhere near her. I believe that those two people on the Dartford Bridge were, in fact, Boris Johnson and Michael Gove.
No, but you know what, Jim? I think you're right. I think we've got a BBB now. Boris has got to come back. Jim, another extraordinary happening, though, over the past 24 hours. Channel 4 News and their lead presenter, Christian Gurumurthy, was caught delivering a foul-mouthed outburst about Minister Steve Baker following an interview with him. Watch.
Steve Baker, thank you very much indeed. Thanks a lot, Steve. It wasn't a stupid question, Steve. You know it. I'm very happy to go up against you on Truss any day. What a
Now, Jim, he was forced to apologise, but he's now been suspended for a week. I think what's brilliant about this moment, actually, Jim, I love it, is that he's now well and truly unmasked the fact that Channel 4 News is
He's out the closet,
anything
love.
but impartial.
He's out the closet.
He's come out as a lefty.
He's come out as a lefty. But even if you are a lefty, you should pretend not to be one, shouldn't you? You know, if you're supposed to be interviewing people, look, maybe he didn't know what that word meant. It's not as if he's got a Christian, an English. I mean, his name is worth a fortune on Scrabble alone. So maybe he should learn that that's not a nice word to call people on air or off air.
No, I agree, but it was a bit like George Michael coming out, wasn't it, Jim? It's like, yeah, we've all known it, but you've finally exposed yourself in public. You're just a lefty. You're not at all an impartial broadcaster. And this is why we want Channel 4 sold. And hopefully if Boris Johnson comes back, that's what he'll do, Jim. I mean, I liked how Guido Fawkes described it. They said objective, impartial, fair and professional, or an emotional campaigner hiding behind a news desk. And we know what he is, Jim.
We know exactly what it is. The only thing Channel 4 do good is that SAS programme with Billy Billingham. And
I like that.
They can just go do one. I like that as well.
I do like that show. I will give you that. But the fact is, Jim, some other broadcaster would pick up that show. There's no way that
I'll pick it up. My channel will pick it up. Ustream will have it. We'll just plod on. I'm a mogul now, Dan. You know, I'm not worried.
Well, Jim, it's amazing that you give us the time, given you're now not just one of the country's
It's because I love you, Dan.
Comedians.
I like your programme. I like the way you broadcast. You float my boat, dear.
Thank you, Jim. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. So I'm going to end it
at this point before we go down some other path. Jim Davidson will speak next week. And it's time now to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. My superstar panel back. Sean, did you hear? You got the endorsement of Jim Davidson there. He said Dominique Samuels and Amy Nicole need to stop hen-pecking you.
Hen-pecking?
That's what he said.
Thanks, Jim, for keeping me safe. I appreciate that.
And for the sex.
Well, last time I checked, I'm not a hen. I'm an adult human female. Thank you.
You're a woman.
OK,
yeah, not
greatest Britain time. I imagine you're not going to be choosing Jim Davidson tonight, Dominique. Who are you going for?
My greatest Britain is Dr. Aseem Malhotra. He did an amazing old parliamentary meeting today going into vaccine damage. And I praise him for that, and it's going to continue, and hopefully something actually gets done about it.
No, indeed, and I had him on the show very recently. Of course, GBNews is really the only mainstream broadcaster in the UK that has given Aseem any time, and I think that's very telling. Sean Bailey, your nominee.
My greatest Britain nominee is the MP Danny Kruger for his comments on Twitter, lamenting the loss of common sense and how we've moved so far away from things like supporting the family, and supporting our great nation of Great Britain. I really enjoyed the feed he had on Twitter, and I commend you to read it.
Do you know what? It was a great tweet. Completely agree. Amy Nicole, your greatest Britain nominee.
My greatest Britain nominee this week is our Prime Minister in waiting,
Boris Johnson.
Stormzy.
Stormzy.
And possibly Rachel Reeves on backing as well for his performance at PMQs.
Well, do you know what? I'd heard about this whole Keir Starmer thing. I haven't watched it, so I'm going to look at it for the first time now with you all. Let's see.
Got the list here. 45p tax cut, gone. Corporation tax cut, gone. 20p tax cut, gone. 2-year energy freeze, gone. Tax-free shopping, gone. Economic credibility.
Do you know what? I'm going to say that's very damn good. That is very damn good. It was one of the only moments I've ever watched Slippery Starmer at PMQs and thought he had even the slightest hint of charisma. It was a good moment for him, I'll give you that. But my winner, today's greatest Britain, Dr. Aseem Malhotra, who is doing absolutely brilliant work. So, Dominique, that is a great choice. Dominique Samuels, your Union Jackass nominee, please.
My Union Jackass has actually completely slipped my mind.
Well, I'm disgusted by it. You're going for the entire Conservative Party.
Oh, right, yes.
But you know what? No, you forgot. So you can just shut up, Dominique.
I think that says it all.
That was kind of...
They are. Sean Bailey, who's your Union?
My Union Jackass is the eco-terrorists Just Stop Oil for their week of unrest. The damage they've caused to people's incomes and they can't see their families, and it's all from a self-righteous, selfish place. They're ruining the argument they're trying to make, and I really think they need to stop. There
should be no platformed.
Absolutely, there should be no platform. Actually, they should be arrested.
They have been. No media rounds.
Amy Nicole, your Union Jackass nominee.
My jackass is Suella Braverman for the tofu wokarati incident, because I think divisive politics are not what the public want, nor do they deserve.
Oh, gosh, she's only copying Stormzy.
I thought it was absolute. Do you know what? It was my favourite.
It was like she borrowed your script, to be fair.
She's just copying Stormzy. You can't deal it out and then not take it back. If you start it, then people join in.
No, I agree. It was like she was delivering one of my digests at the top of the show.
She's definitely been watched.
Brilliant. No, Just Stop Oil. Today's Union Jackass. Thank you so much to Sean Bailey, Dominique Samuels, Amy Nicole. Thank you for your company on what has been a historic and sad day in British politics. Monday night, we're going to know if it's Sunak versus Boris Johnson. Be with us at 9 o'clock Monday night. Headliners next. Good night.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. A day of blustery showers to come tomorrow. It should be a bit drier in the east compared to today, and everywhere it will again be pretty mild. In fact, mild for the next several days. We've got low pressure moving in, bringing the showers tomorrow. It kind of fizzles out on Saturday, a bit of a gap across the south before another low arrives on Sunday, bringing further bands of showers. Let's get back to tonight, because it's a pretty wet affair across a good part of eastern Scotland. Some heavy bursts mixed in, but that rain easing off as it spreads across the far north. Then something a bit drier, easing off the rain across northeast England, but turning misty with a few fog patches, and then Here come the showers into the southwest. Everywhere it's going to be a pretty mild night, double digits for the vast majority. On to Friday's weather. We start with heavy showers for Wales, the Midlands, southwest England. But those showers spread more widely to Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, right across northern England. Much of eastern England will be dry for most of the day, certainly a lot drier than today. But even here, some showers are likely come the late afternoon and into the evening. The winds will be picking